And they did that, especially in Acts chapter 2. Holy Spirit's poured out. Jews from every nation were there. Broadcast the gospel, and it spread everywhere. And it also tells us, Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, "For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace." That son that she brought forth is Jesus. And it goes on to say in chapter 12 of Revelation, verse 5, "Her child is caught up to God in his throne." Speaking of the ascension of Christ. Now keep in mind, these Bible prophecies are not talking so much about what happens in one day. Prophecy often gives you a panorama of history. And chapter 12 is one of the most amazing prophecies because it's taking you from the Old Testament times all the way down to the end of time. It's covering the panorama of the history of the bride of Christ, the church. Well, let's go on here. Who is, number 4, who is the dragon? Well, you don't have to guess about this one. Right in the bosom of that chapter 12, it tells us that great dragon, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, who deceives the whole world. And again, in verse 9, that great dragon was cast out, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, how can a dragon be cast out of heaven? Does the Lord have a dragon factory up there in paradise? If God is love, then why would he make a dragon? And that brings the next question. I'm going to spend some time on this, so be patient with me. If God is love, people always want to know, dragon cast out of heaven, how did he get to heaven? Did the Lord make a devil? Where did the devil come from? If God is more powerful than the devil, then why doesn't he just get a hitman and snuff him out? Zap him. How come he puts up with him? Why would God make a devil? To torment us. If every good and perfect gift is from God, did God, in his angel factory, was there a defect that he didn't see, a bad transistor, and out came a devil? Did God make a mistake? I mean, people ask, haven't you thought these things? I mean, if you're thinking, you'll wonder at some point. Now, if you go back in time, first of all, God is perfect. Everything he makes is perfect. And one of the highest of God's angels came by the name Lucifer. Isaiah chapter 14, and we've got this prophecy here about where Lucifer came from. You start with verse 12. We just heard about the devil being cast out of heaven, right? Revelation 12. Here in Isaiah 14:12, "How you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weaken the nations. For you said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend to the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High." You remember what the devil said to Eve in the garden? You'll be like God. He was sharing his own aspirations. The devil wanted to be God. This high, holy angel that God made began to entertain thoughts of selfishness and rebellion in his own heart. God made him perfect. God makes all of his intelligent creatures perfect, but they have freedom. And in order to love, you must have freedom. God cannot force you to love him, or it stops being love. Isn't that right? God doesn't make his creatures to go, I love you, God, I love you, because that's not love. And when it comes to the subject of predestination and can you lose your salvation, I told you that Jesus will never let go of you. But if the Lord were to force you to be saved, even after you've made a decision, if you want to change your mind, you've lost your freedom, it stops being love. The idea that once you're saved, you can't be lost takes away your freedom. The greatest sign of God's love and freedom is the lake of fire. I'm quoting C.S. Lewis, actually. He loves us so much that he won't force us to love him. It's an intelligent choice. It's the greatest gift that he's given. And Lucifer had that, and he chose to love himself, and God pleaded with him. We don't know how long this rebellion fermented in heaven before it broke out into an open war. But there in Revelation chapter 12, it says war broke out in heaven between Michael and his angels and the dragon and his angels. And ultimately the dragon and his angels, 1/3 of the stars, are cast out. Can you imagine that? If there are billions of angels, 1/3 of them were cast to the earth with Lucifer. Kind of gives you the heebie-jeebies. Think about it. Good news is there are 2 good angels for every bad one. And I think the bad angels are weaker than the good ones anyway. Because you don't get stronger by being evil. You always deteriorate. Sin erodes. And so the devil rebelled. Now, there's another passage you can look at. Matter of fact, when you go home, I've got so much to cover. Look at Ezekiel 28 and read the passages that deal with the king of Tyre. It tells us that the devil was perfect in all his ways until iniquity was found in him. He was Lucifer then. The word Satan means adversary. He turned against God. He wanted God's position. And you know, a lot of false religions teach that you are God. That's at the foundation of many pagan religions, that you somehow work your way into being God. That's what the devil's aspiration was. Let's go on. What does the dragon try to do? It says that he wants to devour the man-child. Revelation 12, verse 4. The dragon stood before the woman who was ready to be delivered to devour her child as soon as it was born. Now, the devil works through kingdoms and powers. In Ezekiel, when you read about the devil, it's talking about the king of Tyre, and then it transitions behind the scenes to talk about the devil who's behind the king of Tyre. In Isaiah, it starts out talking about the king of Babylon, then it goes to the power behind the king of Babylon, which was the devil. King Herod was Roman power. The devil manipulated King Herod to try to kill all the babies in Bethlehem, hoping to exterminate Christ at his birth. The devil wanted to devour Christ when he was weak as a baby. Moving on with our study here. Number 5. When Jesus ascends to heaven, where does the dragon next direct his fury? All right, you can read this in Revelation 12:13. And when the dragon saw that he was cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman that brought forth the man-child. Well, there's no record in the New Testament that the devil went after Mary, the mother of Jesus. But after Jesus ascended to heaven, did the devil direct his fury against his bride, the woman? Yes. Great persecution arose, not only at first among the Jews, but later among the Romans. And unless you slept through your history class, you know that in the Colosseums of Rome, Christians were killed by the tens of thousands. Not only were they fed to the lions and they were burned alive and thrown to the gladiators, they'd have them torn limb from limb by wild horses. They were told to worship the pagan deities in Rome or be executed. And many thousands of them lost their life because they chose first their allegiance to Jesus, to keep his commandments. Well, the devil tried to exterminate the church with plan A. Plan A is just kill them all. But the more he persecuted the church, the more the church grew. And it's often true that blood is seed for the gospel. Matter of fact, it always seems to be true that the greatest revivals of the church also happen during times of persecution. And rarely is the church more pure than when it is thriving in the midst of persecution. It seems like God uses the heat to get the dross out of the gold and a hot iron to get the wrinkles out of the church's garments. Well, the devil then went to plan B. He said, look, if I can't make the church stop growing through just out-and-out persecution, up until the time of Constantine, Christianity was declared religio illicitae, forbidden religion. Constantine, about 321, he came along, he said, look, Christians are pretty peaceful. Nero said that, they're cannibals, they're eating the body and the blood of Christ, and he tried to brand them as crazy, but everyone could see they were the nicest people in the kingdom. And Christianity began to spread everywhere. Matter of fact, they can barely put a subway in anywhere in Rome without running into catacombs now. They had a virtual underground city in Rome. All the Christians went underground. And Constantine, who was a shrewd politician, said, look, they're some of the most productive people in the kingdom. They're not hurting anybody. And so most historians believe, he feigned a conversion. He said, I've had a dream. We're now supposed to conquer under the sign of the cross. Christianity is now legal. He outwardly said, I'll be a Christian, but he wasn't baptized till the time of his death. And he said he ordered his army to march through the Tiber River, and all these Roman pagans who were worshiping all the gods in Rome, they